Hello, humans. Welcome to The Front Line, a leadership and business podcast brought to you by Peregrine Corporate Services, an Isle of Man-based fiduciary provider. My name is Martin Hall, and thanks for listening. Today we're joined by Clive of CDP Associates. Thanks for joining us today, Clive.
It's a pleasure.
As I say to all guests, I appreciate the time because I know everyone's busy at the moment. First of all, maybe just to set the scene, a bit of background to yourself. Where did you grow up and your sort of schooling years?
Yeah, Yorkshireman, born and raised in Doncaster, where I went to school up until I was 18. I went to Hawthorne Junior School in a place called Cantley, and then 2 years at Doncaster Grammar School before my parents moved, and we moved to Don Valley High School, where I did from third form. I don't know what the equivalent year 9 is it these days, up until sixth form. Did a year with Midland Bank, and then went on to university, sponsored by them at Loughborough University, doing banking and finance.
All right, okay.
So whistle stop tour through my my education.
So was that, I say back then, not to be disrespectful, but back then the bank would, so you do a bit of trainee work and then they'd send you off?
It's actually quite interesting. It was the first time that Midland Bank was actually sponsored a cohort of students to go to university to do and the banking and finance degree was at Loughborough was the first. We were on the first course, so we were very much guinea pigs. And part of the course, if you were sponsored by Midland, I say sponsored, we got the grand total of £100 book grant. Which you were supposed to spend on books, and then you did a year leading up to university, and from school, and then I had a job in all the holidays through the time I was at university, and then I went back.
Was that job with the bank during that time?
Yes, yeah. Right. The minimum they asked for was 6 weeks during the summer. Okay. But I actually found it a useful source of income too, and I did every holiday, and it was good. It was a good way of getting a grounding, actually, almost at a junior level. Got to know the staff in the 4 years I was in Doncaster, so I always felt part of what was going on throughout that 4 years. So it was good. I enjoyed it.
So
most of the time, anyway.
So that was 4 years of from leaving school and through.
That's right, yeah.
Right, okay, yeah. Quite an extended, right. And I know you spent a lot of your career with HSBC.
Yeah, I was.
As it was,
just say at Midland, they were acquired by HSBC 1992, 93, something like that now. I did 30 years. From joining Doncaster High Street branch in 1974, and left 30 years virtually to the day.
So it's quite interesting, and I think certainly more, I guess, in modern times, that people staying with one company for that certainly the bulk of their career is pretty unusual. Certainly more so now. For yourself back then, was that banking career always something you wanted to get into, and then I suppose once you become loyal to a firm, that was important to you?
Yeah, to a certain extent, I stumbled upon it. My first choice of career was I was going to go into the army. I went to Welbeck College, which was is the Army's sixth form college for doing sixth form, doing A levels there. But unfortunately, I sustained quite a bad injury when playing rugby, which put a bit of a threat in terms of whether I would actually be able to get into Sandhurst. I mean, in hindsight, probably would have been okay, but I decided that as rather than do 2 years and then see my friends go off to Sandhurst, I'd go back to my old school and pick up my education back at my old school in Doncaster.
And what was the hope in the military? What was the thought process there to?
I guess the courses that we're doing, pure and applied maths, and it was sort of engineering. Actually, my brother followed into Welbeck a couple of years later, and he went on for 12 years in the Royal Engineers. So it potentially was going to be something like that. And I had no firm plans. Most of the guys from Welbeck go into REME, Royal Engineers, sort of the technical side of things. And so going back to school and choosing a career in banking was somewhat different. As I say, no great planning. I happened to see an advert in a sixth form magazine that was out saying that Midland was advertising this course, sponsorship course, and so I decided that it would be useful to be able to pay my way through university with a job before and the rest of it. And so I applied, got an interview, got asked to a second interview, and then I think a third interview. So it was all, well, I've got this far, I might as well carry on. It was literally like that. And then when I joined Midland Bank, as I say, most of the 30 years I was in the bank, I enjoyed it, not all of it. Some jobs better than I enjoyed, some jobs more than others.
Yeah, so did the job take you around a lot of the UK then, as you kind of...
Yes, primarily the UK, yeah.
And was that not career driven, but it'd be an opportunity to move up the ladder, so we need to move the family to X or Y?
Yeah, we were quite fortunate in many ways. I mean, going back to the mid-70s, early 80s, the clearing banks were expanding at a rate of knots, and so people were being moved up the ladder, moving around the country almost every 2 years. So as a different world now, the other side of the bell curve, where jobs are disappearing or being centralised, and that in those days there was a lot of expansion, a lot of opportunity. But I was fortunate in the sense that I managed to do a number of jobs in each of the places. So we only moved about 4 times, which for a lot of people sounds a lot, but actually for a lot of people in banking, they'll say how lucky we were, really.
Right. Yeah, right.
I had a couple of spells in London, worked in the southeast of England, and worked in Yorkshire. And then came over to the Isle of Man in 2001 as head of HSBC on the Isle of Man.
Okay. Before maybe we jump into the Isle of Man aspect, the just general question, it's a very broad question, I guess, but I guess banking's moved on such a massive amount since almost that first day you walked in the office. What would you say you've seen as the biggest change in all of that?
Wow, that's a big question. That I think it depends what day I wake up, I think, and you just have different views about it. I think there are a number of things that have changed. Obviously, centralisation, technology. I mean, in some ways, banks were very slow to take on technology, adopted it very quickly, and continue to sort of, I think, tend to be followers rather than sort of innovative users of technology. But yeah, the technology side of things probably is the biggest change. Personalisation, I think. When I first joined Midland Bank, I remember not long after I'd started being called into the manager's office and being told, keep your nose clean, son, and you've got a job for life. And that really was the mantra in those days, that the majority of people would join whatever clearing bank it was and stay. And it's not until the sort of last 20 years or so that has changed significantly.
Yeah.
In fact, I really didn't experience working with that many people from who'd worked in other organisations until I came to the Isle of Man, and then I had staff working with me who'd worked for other banks and worked for other organisations, and a much higher number of people than I'd experienced through a whole sort of 27 years prior to that.
I guess that was quite refreshing, and I suppose what you might consider sort of new eyes or clean eyes contributing to the...
Yeah, I think it taught me a lot in terms of recognising the importance of getting experience. I mean, I was quite fortunate. I did, as I say, I did a whole range of different jobs, from looking after the corner shop clients and working with some major corporates when I worked in London. So I had quite a big widespread of experience over many years. But
well, on that note, if you don't mind, when you look at communication and dealing with sort of two ends of the spectrum there, the small corner shop and the big corporate, do you have different styles in regard to the communication of them, or is it always just about that personal, I guess, that personal connection?
Yeah, I think it's a personal thing. I think I wouldn't say you. I think I wouldn't say I changed. You can't change your personality. That's what it is. I preferred working in what's probably called commercial banking as opposed to corporate banking. I guess the happiest time in my career was when I was dealing with maybe small listed companies, but primarily family-owned businesses, that you felt as though you were actually adding value to them, as in terms of not just providing finance, but actually a sounding board, and being somebody they could talk to who was independent to the people around them in the company. And I enjoyed that side of the work I did. Large corporates, met some lovely people, some interesting people, some real bores, but the corporate world just didn't, or the corporate banking side of it didn't really sort of grab my. I think I couldn't get passionate about it. It was a job rather than actually something that I wanted to do.
Yeah. So you mentioned 01, you came to the Isle of Man with the bank. How you obviously, I think it was 03 you left the bank. After you,
04. I did 3 years.
Was that just time? You sort of done your service and it was time to move on?
It was a number of things, really. I've often described it as stars aligning into certain. I've done 30 years. There was a potential of going back to the UK. The level I was at with HSBC, I could foresee significant job reductions, which actually happened. And I was ready for a change, to be quite honest. I'd done 30 years, and it was, I'd always had a thought that there was something else. What it was, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I decided, and also we're very happy on the Isle of Man as a family. The 2 daughters were, I think, trying to think how old they were, about 13 and 12. And they loved Ramsey. They were at Ramsey Grammar School, loved it. They loved it. They had good friends, lovely environment. So we decided as a family we'd like to stay on the Isle of Man. So it all came together, and I decided that if I was ever going to make a change, it was now.
And was that when you started up CDP?
Yeah, I started up CDP Associates. I had, as I say, no immediate thoughts as to exactly what that would look like. I was very fortunate. I was taken on by a couple of clients quite early.
Okay. Is that consultancy type work or NED?
Consultancy work, yes, yeah. And one of which was with Isle of Man Isle of Man Insurance Trust Company. And I'm ever grateful to them, and particularly Nigel Wood at that time, who gave me an office to operate out of, computer to use, telephone, and gave me a base to get myself established in the self-employment world. Sort of the transition from being in an institution for 30 years to working for myself. It was tough, actually. Probably the hardest thing of moving out of a corporate into being self-employment was actually getting used to the fact that that routine, if you like, it wasn't 9 to 5, but you get the gist of what I'm talking about. The 9 to 5 job of a corporate. and to the flexibility of actually being your own boss, running your own time, and working around that. And it took me probably a number of years before I was really, really comfortable with being seen in the gym at 11 o'clock if I didn't have, or went for a swim at 11 o'clock and thinking, what will people think? And I mean, I was still a relatively young man, so I didn't want
people even think that now. I mean, we're 15, maybe 15 years on from there, and there's still people, even now, obviously everyone working from home, there's still that feeling that your employers, you need to be here at a certain time, when that work-life balance seems to be, I'm sure it'll switch a lot more now with what's going on in the world.
Yeah, I hope that's the case. I think, as I say, it took me a long time. I was shocked is not the right word, but I was surprised how institutionalized you are as when you are working within a large organization that I cared about. I did 30 years with them, man and boy, and I know that sounds a bit twee, but I was incredibly loyal. I mean, I also learned that, yes, give loyalty whilst you're in the organisation, but the other side of the coin is that when you are in the wrong place at the wrong time and the job disappears, the fact that you've done 30 years really doesn't count for much in a large corporate, which is a shame, but that's a reality of life. And
it's an interesting piece of advice, because you're right. It's you can be as loyal, but it's a two-way street as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, just recognise that I'm not one of the person who believes that you should be jumping organisations every 2 years. I don't think that does you as an individual a lot of good, and I also don't think organisations should will start to get suspicious of people who do that. But I also think that organisations should recognise that if they are not able to fulfil the needs of their employees, they've got to expect them to move on. And I think that's probably more expected now than it was when I first started my early career. I still have a few friends. Still have a few friends. That's nice, isn't it? That actually, one of my closest friends. We actually were roommates at a uni, and he retired from HSBC at the age of 64 years ago, just over 4 years ago, and went back and just 3 days. So he has remained loyal for that whole period, and I suppose knocking on for over 45 years. He stayed with the organisation. So there are still people who do it, and I'm sure when we've spoken, he's occasionally been a bit envious of the fact that I made a change, but also he's had a good career. So
so if you look back to those days at HFPC, when you come to sort of management and your management style, what was your management style?
I'd like to think that I was someone who encouraged people to develop themselves and try and fulfill their full potential.
So you were an empowerer, you might call them.
I think that's probably the best way of describe it. But that your style changes when you're under personal stress, when you're under pressure from bosses, from your own bosses. So tried not to be someone who said do it, just do it. That was a bit of a mantra in HSBC with another letter in it. And quite often that was the case. And so I think that you develop as a person over years. And so my style of management when I was a younger person compared to what my style of management would be now, or what it was before I left HSBC, will have been totally different. and also depending on the teams that you worked with.
Of course, yeah. I know at the moment you do some non-exec roles. How do you, obviously, I guess very much an overseeing element. How do you find that? And I guess it must be interesting as well going into other types of businesses. You mentioned first of all when you left the bank and went into a different industry.
Yeah, it was one of the decisions I did make when I left HSBC, that I did think that I could add value as a non-executive director. I felt that I had a varied career, as I say, dealing with, I did internal audit, I worked with large corporates, worked with small businesses. So I had a wide range of knowledge, knew a little bit about a lot of things. So I've often described it as I was almost a GP within the financial world, if you're the banking world, that I didn't have the in-depth knowledge that a lot of people do if they stay within particularly the friend I was talking about a few minutes ago. He's very, very specialised in what he does, and I would have absolutely really no idea what that was about. But he was an example of somebody I might be able to get in contact with if a client needed that advice down that sort of route. So I knew a lot of people. I touched sort of had experience and met a lot of people in London, outside London. So it was a useful. So I always thought that would be a really good way to add value to businesses. And I did my first non-executive directorship in 2005. And I look back now 15 years later and you think, how naive.
I do know what you mean. I think it's just gradual, isn't it? Because you learn, developing every day, learning every day, that you do look back and think, what the hell's going on there 10 years ago? But yeah, and it's quite again, it's nice to hear that I will, when I look at myself and think further down the road, I'll continue to look back and go, what the hell was I doing there? Or I was naive. I didn't really know, or, that wasn't. But the key is to be able to look back, isn't it? And sort of self-analyze and self-criticize and learn, so you're better going forward. And
yeah, absolutely. I think, I did the Institute of Directors diploma in company direction, and then became a chartered director. So that was, a determination to have an academic and more of an understanding around the roles, responsibilities of a director, and that's always stood in good stead, if you like. And also because you have to do professional development, continuous professional development as part of it, to keep your qualification.
Of course.
It's a real incentive to keep yourself reasonably up to date with developments in the world of corporate governance. And I was also chairman of the local branch of the Institute of Directors for 4 years. So I'm a big advocate of the use of non-executive directors, and that's not a sales pitch. I just think that a lot of businesses miss a trick. I think obviously on the Isle of Man, regulated businesses are encouraged to have non-executive directors. I think historically, a lot of people have had non-executive directors because they've had to, rather than what value that they could get out of a non-executive director. And I really do believe that if you select the right non-executive director, you can actually add value. They can actually add value to you as a business. And I think in some ways, this current crisis, to have had, for a number of businesses, that will be at a loss as to what the implications are going to be for them. I'm not saying a non-executive director would have a solution, but be almost a shoulder to cry on,
Yeah,
somebody to bounce, who's got no axe to grind, who's got no ulterior motive, just to be able to talk about the things that worry people, the things that concern people. What do you think to the idea I've got for doing this?
It's that element of impartiality, isn't it? And
absolutely,
they're not ingrained in the day-to-day business, so there's less emotion there as well, and therefore you'd like to think a calmer head. Not that people aren't calm, but a calmer head. And
it goes back, so my early days in commercial banking, when I worked down in the southeast of England, so I had in those days was able to have a relatively small portfolio of clients. So I was out and about meeting them, and quite often be that type of sounding board, and somebody would talk about their business plan, obviously looking at raising finance primarily, but quite often I'd be able to sit in a meeting with the chief executive, head of the family, main shareholder, and they would talk about their ideas, thoughts, plans, concerns, worries. And I could sit for an hour and virtually say nothing other than just, but actually help that businessman or woman tremendously in terms of helping them understand their own thinking.
Yeah.
And so that it was that sort of that time when I really enjoyed my career, that I thought actually my background could enable me to with the right businesses be a non-executive director, and I built up over the years a small portfolio of non-exec directorships, and obviously some come to an end, and it's time to move on. And so
I was going to say, I suppose outside of the work environment, for those watching on YouTube, is there a bit of guitar, is it, and a bit of sport? What fills your spare time?
I must move that guitar, because every time I do one of these things, people see it. I took up the guitar literally 18 months ago.
Right.
At the great age of 63, I decided that I've always fancied playing the guitar. My younger brother played the guitar from the age of about 14 or 15, and I've always loved guitar music, acoustic music primarily, from the days of Simon and Garfunkel, Paul Simon, Bob Dylan, all those sort of people. I always loved it, listened to it loads. And then I don't know what it was. I was in London for some meetings, and I suddenly thought, you know what, it's time for me to do something. So I decided that I would look for somebody on the Isle of Man, a guitar teacher on the Isle of Man, and so I found a guitar teacher who was a lovely chap, and teaches in a way that teaches using music that I knew and grew up with. So far, I've kept going for 18 months. Treated myself to a new guitar a few months just before the lockdown, actually, which I'm glad I did. It's been good fun. Sport-wise, I played primarily cricket, rugby, a bit on and off with rugby because of the injury I talked about earlier. But I love watching sport, and I was heavily involved for a long time as chairman of the Isle of Man Swimming Association. So swimming was the sport I sort of excelled in when I was younger. I went back into masters swimming in my late 30s. Did a bit then, and did a bit again when I turned 60. So,
right.
So still pools are all closed, of course, at the moment. But swimming has always played a big part in my life.
Right. And if people want to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out to you, Clive?
Probably email these days. I used to have a website, but I decided that actually was I don't sort of use it now. So email.
We can add that to our.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm always, you know, I'm happy to talk. I've just a recent example through LinkedIn. Somebody reached out to me for somebody moving to the island, just for a bit of advice around who to talk to and that sort of thing. And always happy to talk to people and help if I can. And my primary driver is to help people, and if work comes out of that in due course, that's fine. And that's a philosophy that actually served me really well over the 16 years that I've been working for myself now. That it's surprising, actually, if you're patient and yourself, and people will work out whether there is anything that I can help them with, and if they can, then that's when they will pay for it, if you like. And I don't mean that they'll pay for it, but you know, that's be prepared. And that's the philosophy I use, and I will help people if I can, and if I can't, I've got much better at saying, look, I like what you're doing, but there's not much I can do to help directly, and maybe pass them on to somebody
in the right direction.
Yeah.
No, well, I appreciate your time today. It's been fascinating, sort of digging into the different aspects and the timeline. So I appreciate your time today. Thanks everyone for listening once again.